Welcome to Mythic Hidden Chronicles, where the past comes alive, and forgotten stories echo through time. Today, we take you back to the year 537 AD, to the heart of a war that shaped the fate of an empire. The Gothic War, a brutal clash between the Eastern Roman Empire and the Ostrogoths, brought bloodshed, betrayal, and resilience. In the midst of this chaos, we follow Livia, a healer caught between two worlds, as she struggles to survive the siege of Rome. Prepare to journey into a time of courage and sorrow, where every heartbeat could be the last. Now, let the story begin. In the year 537 AD, the city of Rome stood as a shadow of its former glory. Once the heart of a vast empire, it now found itself at the center of a brutal conflict between the Eastern Roman Empire, led by Emperor Justinian I, and the Ostrogothic Kingdom of Italy. The Gothic War had raged for 2 years, leaving a trail of devastation across the Italian peninsula. Within the ancient walls of Rome, life had taken on a grim rhythm. The streets, once bustling with merchants and scholars, were now filled with weary soldiers and anxious citizens. The air was thick with tension, as rumors of an impending siege spread like wildfire. Among the inhabitants was a young woman named Livia. Born to a Roman mother and an Ostrogothic father, she embodied the union of two worlds now at war. Her father had died years earlier, leaving her and her mother to navigate the complexities of a divided society. Livia had inherited her father's striking features, piercing blue eyes and flaxen hair, and her mother's resilience. She worked as a healer, tending to the sick and wounded, a role that had become increasingly vital as the specter of war loomed ever closer. One crisp morning, as the first light of dawn painted the sky in hues of pink and gold, Livia made her way to the Forum. The once grand marketplace was now a makeshift infirmary, filled with the groans of the injured and the murmur of worried families. As she moved among the rows of cots, offering what comfort she could, a commotion erupted near the entrance. Turning, she saw a group of soldiers escorting a man whose presence commanded attention. He was tall, with a bearing that spoke of authority and experience. His armor, though battle-worn, bore the insignia of the Eastern Roman Empire. Whispers rippled through the crowd. "It's General Belisarius," someone murmured. The emperor's finest commander, Belisarius had arrived in Italy 2 years prior, leading a campaign to reclaim the territories lost to the Ostrogoths. His reputation as a brilliant strategist had preceded him, and many in Rome saw him as their best hope against the Gothic forces. As he surveyed the scene, his gaze fell upon Livia. For a brief moment, their eyes met, and in that instant, Livia felt the weight of the world pressing down upon her. Here was a man burdened with the fate of a city, a people, and an empire. Days turned into weeks, and the tension within Rome escalated. Scouts reported that the Ostrogothic king, Vitiges, was amassing a formidable army, intent on reclaiming the city. The citizens braced themselves for the inevitable siege. Livia's days became a blur of activity. The influx of wounded soldiers grew, and resources dwindled. Yet, amidst the chaos, she found solace in her work, her hands providing relief where words could not. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows over the city, Livia was approached by a young soldier named Marcus. He was barely older than she, with a face that still held traces of boyish innocence. "Lady Livia," he began, his voice trembling slightly, I have a favor to ask." She looked up from her work, offering him a reassuring smile. "What is it, Marcus?" He hesitated, glancing around to ensure they were not overheard. If something happens to me during the siege, could you deliver a letter to my family? They live in a village not far from here." Livia's heart ached at the vulnerability in his eyes. She reached out, placing a gentle hand on his arm. "Of course, Marcus, but you mustn't lose hope. We will endure this." He nodded, swallowing hard. "Thank you." As the days passed, the Ostrogothic army encircled Rome, cutting off supply lines and isolating the city. The siege had begun in earnest. The once vibrant city now faced the grim realities of war, scarcity of food, outbreaks of disease, and the constant threat of attack. Belisarius, ever the tactician, orchestrated the city's defenses with meticulous precision. He fortified the walls, organized patrols, and devised strategies to counter the Gothic assaults. Yet, despite his efforts, the situation grew increasingly dire. Livia continued her work, tending to the growing number of casualties. The infirmary was filled beyond capacity, and the cries of the suffering became a haunting symphony that echoed through the night. One particularly harrowing night, as a violent storm raged outside, Livia was awakened by the sound of distant shouting. Rushing to the infirmary, she found a scene of chaos. A group of soldiers had returned from a skirmish, bearing the wounded and the dead. Among them was Marcus. He lay on a stretcher, his face pale and contorted in pain. Blood seeped from a deep gash in his side. Livia's breath caught in her throat. She knelt beside him, her hands moving instinctively to assess the wound. "Marcus," she whispered, "stay with me." His eyes fluttered open, and he managed a weak smile. I tried to be brave." "You did," she replied, her voice steady despite the turmoil within. "Now, let me help you." Hours passed as Livia worked tirelessly to stabilize him. She cleaned the wound, stitched the torn flesh, and administered what little medicine remained. As dawn approached, Marcus slipped into a restless sleep, his breathing shallow but steady. Exhausted, Livia sank onto a nearby stool, her mind a whirlwind of emotions. The weight of the siege, the suffering of the people, and the uncertainty of the future pressed heavily upon her. In the days that followed, the situation in Rome grew increasingly desperate. Food supplies dwindled, and the morale of both soldiers and citizens waned. The Ostrogoths launched relentless assaults on the city's defenses, each one more ferocious than the last. Belisarius, recognizing the dire circumstances, devised a bold plan. He ordered a sortie, a sudden attack against the besieging forces, to disrupt their operations and buy the city some much-needed respite. The night before the planned assault, Livia found herself unable to sleep. She wandered the quiet streets, her thoughts a tangled web of fear and hope. As she approached the city walls, she spotted a solitary figure standing atop the battlements, gazing out into the darkness. Drawing closer, she recognized the familiar silhouette of General Belisarius. "General," she called softly. He turned, surprise flickering across his features. "Livia, what brings you here at this hour?" "I could ask you the same," she replied, offering a faint smile. He sighed, his gaze returning to the horizon. "A leader's burden is a heavy one. The lives of so many rest upon my decisions." She stepped beside him, following his gaze into the night. "You carry that burden with honor. The people believe in you." "And you?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "Do you believe in me?" Livia met his eyes, seeing the vulnerability hidden beneath his stoic exterior. "I do." For a moment, they stood in silence, two souls connected by the weight of war and the hope of survival. The echoes of war fade, but the stories of those who lived through it remain. Livia, Belisarius, and the countless souls who walked the streets of Rome during the siege, though their voices have been lost to time, their struggles live on in history. What would you have done in their place? Would you have endured the siege, fought in the battles, or sought another path? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this tale from the Gothic War, be sure to subscribe to Mythic Hidden Chronicles for more immersive journeys into the past. Until next time, may history's whispers guide you.